If you've been playing Mecha Break since the beginning, you'll already know that there have been numerous issues that have led us to the state we're currently in, where you can only play ranked between the degenerate hours of 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. EST, and most of the time you can't even play the fucking game on Sundays. If you're new to the game and you're wanting to try it out for the first time, this may be off-putting, which I mean, valid. Who really wants to plan their entire day around playing a video game? As someone who's chronically online and my only real responsibility is clocking into my 9 to 5 and paying my bills, this causes some friction even for me. First, let's explain how ranked got so bad. It was February 2025 and Mecha Break had just dropped its second open beta, where the game hit a massive player peak of 300,000 players, which is kind of insane for a studio of season size. Kudos to you. However, the player base quickly jumped off a cliff, and this is due to three main culprits. One of the main issues with Mecha Break is the bots. You can play ranked for 10 hours before even encountering another human. This does one of two things to new players. One, they don't realize they're bots and they think they're really good at the game, and then once they get to actual players, they get stomped into the ground and quit playing. Or two, they realize they're only playing against bots and quit the game. Who wants to play against bots in their ranked mode? Ranked is designed to be a competitive mode where the best player makes it to the top. And if Grandmaster feels like a participation trophy, no one will actually care about ranked. The only real outcome for new players is to quit playing the game. No wonder it's dying. The game actively discourages new players from staying around. Now there are a few players that make it through the trenches and slowly start to climb their way into higher lobbies, and what awaits them there is a queue simulator. After all the hard work you put into making it all the way onto the leaderboard, you're greeted by an infinite timer that will only match you between the hours of 11 and 1 a.m. Most adults with a normal schedule are either asleep by then or winding down for the night. This is partially the community's fault, because a lot of Mecha Break players tend to have degenerate schedules, and scrims happen earlier in the day, so there's not much queuing going on then. Bots are one of the main issue plaguing ranked, but they aren't the only issue. I did discuss earlier how there are three main problems with ranked, one of which being the absolute bloat of ranks. Why on earth do we have 11 ranks with one rank being all but non-existent in North America? Because it requires you to have at least 100 players on the leaderboard, which doesn't happen since we barely have enough players to play the game. 11 ranks just makes zero logical sense with the current size of the player base and the skill level disparity. Bronze to Masters is still basically just bronze because all you fight are bots the entire time. Once you hit Grandmaster, you have officially hit Silver, then from there you can slowly start the climb to the leaderboard, where less than 500 people are. In no world should your game have less than 500 people at the top of the leaderboard. This clearly shows ranked is fundamentally broken and needs a lot of work to be fixed. The final issue that contributes to ranked being all but unplayable is the block list. Each player currently has the ability to block 20 players at a time, and the ability to switch them out whenever they would like to. This feature doesn't really matter when you have hundreds of thousand players playing your game every day, but when you have a few thousand split between 4 regions, it makes it very hard for the matchmaking system to function when half the players are blocked. Since I've complained about a lot of these issues, I don't think it'd really be fair of me to not provide any sort of solution for these ranked problems. So let's break down each of these problems and discuss what needs to be fixed, starting off with bots. I believe bot ranks either need to be removed entirely or limited to bronze, with silver being a mix of bots and human matches. Similar to Grandmaster, but I think more bot matches. Casual mode should also have a separate mode for queuing against bots and players, so that way if you only want to play against humans, you can be in a separate queue for humans. There's no reason you should be forced into playing against bots when you don't want to. We also need to be more transparent with the players that they're in a bot match. In my opinion, that would be the best way of dealing with bots. Now, if that was the only changes we made to ranked, the game would truly become unplayable. So we also have to change the number of ranks in the game. Everything past Masters should be cut off. Then on top of that, we need to reduce the tiers per rank from 5 to 4. So you'll have Gold 4 to Gold 1 instead of Gold 5 to Gold 1, which seems like a small change, but it helps shrink the bucket of players and lowers the grind, which is important when the amount of time you have to realistically queue the game is limited. The new rank system would look like this. Bronze to Silver would be your bot lobbies, then you'd have Gold, Platinum, Diamond, and Legendary/Indestructible, which would be your top 500 and top 100 respectively. Now that we've solved the bot issues and fixed the number of ranks, next we need to address the matchmaking system, which has already come a long way, but I believe we need to push it further. No player, including indie players, should have to wait longer than 30 minutes to play the game when there's other players actively queuing ranked. So, how do we fix this issue without affecting the match quality and competitive integrity? Currently, the game expands a max range of roughly one rank above and below you, but I believe that the system needs to be pushed further. This is where I might get into a little bit of controversial territory, and I could totally be wrong with this take and I can accept that, but I believe all ranks, excluding bronze and silver, should be able to play with each other. Now, of course, the ideal situation is to prioritize keeping the ranked integrity as a high priority, but a game with a slightly worse match quality is better than a game that can't be played. The longer you wait, the more ranks you should be allowed to queue with, until you're able to queue with any rank. This should work for lower tier ranks as well. To retain some level of competitive integrity, players should earn a certain amount of ELO based on the disparity of ELO between players. For example, an indie player put into a lobby filled with golds, that indie player should earn and lose very little ELO. However, if an indie player is in a lobby filled with indies, there shouldn't be any changes made to the ELO system. Okay, so that was a little complicated, but the main idea of these changes are allow players to be able to play the game throughout the day while not ruining the competitive integrity of ranked by allowing high ranked players to farm lesser skilled players. For this system to function properly, it's also extremely important for Smurf accounts to no longer be playable. However, since they're currently a necessary evil, I believe that Smurf accounts should be allowed to either merge or have some sort of compensation for the money and time they put into the other account. I also want to address region locking. It's not that big of a deal, but I do think with the current player base, it doesn't serve that much of a purpose other than adding friction to for people to play more Mecha Break, which is arguably the biggest issue with Mecha Break right now. The final point we need to go over is the abuse of the block list. With the current player population, the block list shouldn't be used to prevent bad players from getting on your team, but be used to prevent toxic players from getting on your team and contacting you. So to fix the block list, I believe you should only be allowed 3 slots with a 1 week cooldown to prevent players from constantly swapping out players depending on who is playing at a different time of day. I genuinely believe if we make these changes, MechBreak has a chance to grow its community and have a healthy, thriving competitive scene.